Okay, hearing none, we're going to move to the reserve expenses. The reserve study identified these two items, the fence staining and the asphalt sealing. I noticed in base camp, VIS needs to know the scope of work a little bit better.
Yes.
Heaven, you and I can do that during our walkthrough next week.
Okay, that's perfect.
We'll determine what's common there so that you can get these RFPs out and back. No real timeline other than it's a scheduled 22 reserve expense, so we need to conduct it this year. Both those items look like they're warm weather labor projects, so we're trying to get ahead of scheduling by getting these proposals in now for approval so that we can get on people's schedules.
Yeah, so we already work with a few companies, so I plan to reach out to those companies that we already work with as a company, and it'll be a little faster process, and they value more of our time trying to search for new companies. And so once we do that walkthrough, I can get them a better scope of what proposal is needed, and then they will probably get back to me within, since our next walkthrough is next week, then they can get back to me by the following month, hopefully.
That sounds perfect. And Paul was savvy enough to use his Apple Pen to highlight some private roads and stuff that we used for the snow vendor.
Okay.
Snow removal company. So we've got some graphics that will help visualize for you as well.
Great.
We'll get those to you. Any discussion here from the board?
Yeah, one on the fence staining. Originally, I think when this was done, we were looking at only staining the fence in the park. All right. I think the board needs to sit down and consider, do we want to stain more than that? Because if we don't, and we leave it up to individuals in the community to stain their fence when they feel like it, we're going to have different stained fences throughout the entire community. And that is not going to look good.
Evan, I'm going to give the floor to you because you had the perfect response to that when I asked you the same thing.
Yes, so what we do recommend, this is what we do with all of our communities regarding fence staining. If y'all don't already have something lined up in the CCNRs or the rules and regulations about fence staining and specifically what color it needs to be, then that's something that we can add since we are revising. Another thing that we do is during our compliance runs, we can create this as a exterior maintenance that the homeowner is responsible for. Since it is an exterior maintenance that is on their property line, it's their fences, they are responsible for those fences. So what we usually do is just say our next compliance run, we determine which fences need staining. If it's all of them, then it's all of them. If it's just a few that are just very dingy and they need staining, or y'all have that original color that they were originally stained, then we can use that color and have a letter sent out to these homeowners letting them know your fence needs attention and it needs to be stained by X date. Usually we prefer to do, since this is something larger that they would need to get someone out and possibly see how much it would be, see if it's something they can do right away. Maybe they can't do it right away because it's a larger project for them. We usually try to give them 3 to 6 months depending on the scope of the whole work that needs to be done. And if it's not done per the first compliance courtesy letter, then we'll say, okay, by 6 months, if it's not done, then we're going to send another letter, and we can choose to find them. We can choose to send a second courtesy letter, like just, hey, this is a second notice that your fence needs to be stained by the end of the year. Just depending on things like that. Sometimes, like if it has to do with house painting, fence staining, we do like to give up to a year before we do start finding, and then requiring that specific color. So if it's not so then it's all the same color and it's in order and it's not, you don't have some random color, but that's something that I believe Eric said that y'all did have an original color previously that y'all may be able to use.
Yeah, so I coordinated with Century, and they gave me the exact paint code or stain code for Sherwin-Williams. Couldn't think of the name. So that's in the edited revised rules that I'm going to drop into Basecamp for you all to see. So as an owner, and then what I can do at Sherwin-Williams, because I saw it when I was in there buying some paint, is if we tell them the community name and what lots or whatever, if a customer walks in asking for, hey, I forgot what it's called or whatever, all they got to do is say the community name and they'll get hooked up at the counter. All they got to do is show up. And then the other piece that Heaven had brought to my attention was we can use the newsletter, e-blast, and whatever other means of communication that we choose to identify, hey, this year is a staining year. And we can control it that way rather than pulling a contract to do all these private lots and having to figure out that aspect. We can determine as a board, knowing that the oldest home was completed in 2018 and the newest home was completed in 2020. You got some that are 3 years into stain and some that are not, right? So however you all wanted to say 2022 is a stain year. Obviously, for the common area, fence staining is identified in the reserve study as being a requirement for this year. So if you want to send out a notice to the owner saying, hey, this year is the year to stain your fence, then they've got all summer to comply. And then, like Heaven said, we just address it with the compliance committee through VIS rather than trying to take on a project that really isn't our lane as an HOA board to be completing the work on these private lots.
So my question is, if the other side of your fence is a common area, who takes care of that other side of the fence?
If the fence is part of the property line, then it is the homeowner's responsibility.
So they take care of both sides.
Yes.
So, okay. So I'm looking down the alleyway behind Maze. Was there like 6 or 7 different homes there? So there's going to be different fence stain levels throughout that area because some people will do it 1 year and some people will do it 3 years later.
Right. That's what I'm proposing, Paul. So we identify as the board, we identify what year is a stain year and all 107 units stain that same year. So the age of the stain is only going to be months apart from each other at best, especially considering we're in the Pacific Northwest and you only have a few months of opportunity to do such a project.
So for the part that we're responsible for, that little fence there in the park, little tiny fence there, could we, probably wouldn't make a big deal, but if we made a deal with the staining company that we would hire them to do that, would they be willing to give our homeowners a discount if they would do theirs at the same time?
The same way that I pulled the tree contract, right? So the majority of the trees were on the HOA to handle, and there were like literally three private trees, and I extended the plan to those private owners, and they opted in individually and paid direct to the arborist. So I imagine that we could do the same with these vendors for the fence staining.
And what I recommend to be able to do that is when we send out this e-blast or put it on the newsletter or send out these courtesy letters, however we choose to do it, we can put in that information. We are working with X contractors to get the parking fence done. If you would like to use them as well, please reach out to us and we can add you and they can bill you separately. And we just add them to the list for those for that contract.
Yep. Perfect. That's exactly how it worked with the previous tree work. So I think that's the best plan.